You're listening to Living Free, your podcast for a life full of freedom and magic. I'm your host, Tanja Hirsch, and I hope that every time you listen, you feel a little bit more inspired to follow your intuition and to create a life beyond your wildest dreams. Welcome back, my loves, to the Living Free podcast. Today, I have the one and only Aislinn Walton, also known as the Abundance Witch on Instagram. On the podcast, we dive soul naked, we go really deep, and at the same time, it was a really expansive, inspiring interview. We talked about orgasmic manifestation, about what it takes to live your life from truth, from an expansion of your soul, on how to create your life that feels alive for you and that feels true to you, and what it takes to break free from the limitations of your mind and what you think is possible, into opening yourself for magic and for life to surprise you, and from this orgasmic energy to ripple through you so you can create the life of your deepest desires. She shares a lot about her personal stories. We had an amazing interview today. And before I introduce Aislinn to the show, a little reminder that on the 30th of December, I will be guiding my ceremony, my closing 2022 ceremony. It's my favorite ceremony of the year, where we come together and we go through the whole year of 2022. And I don't know about you, but for me, it's been a crazy wild ride. I've never been forced on my knees so many times, but I also never felt so much expansion and aliveness and purpose in my life. And it's so easy to close the year saying, oh my God, this was so hard, and actually integrate the lessons and the blessings, and to look through the year and see, wow, there's actually been so much beauty in it as well. So we're going to go through the whole year together. We're going to close it. We're going to celebrate. We're going to integrate. And if you want to join, you can find the links on my website or in the show notes. And now, without further ado, let's welcome Aislinn Walton to the podcast. She's a success coach who mentors women and entrepreneurs on their journey of creating massively abundant business through the lens of feminine leadership. And she's really the embodiment of her work. She radiates feminine leadership with every cell of her being. And she values relational intelligence, intimacy, aligned strategy, and spirituality as key pieces to success as a woman on a purpose-driven path. She hosts groups and programs as well as private mentorship opportunities. So make sure to follow her. Make sure to connect with her. She's an amazing human being, a beautiful soul, connected to her truth. And without further ado, let's welcome her to the podcast. Welcome to the Living Free podcast, Aislinn. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you, Tanja. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to see where this conversation goes. And I'm just appreciative that you've invited me.
So the first question I would like to ask you, what does living free mean to you right now in this moment?
Oh, that's such a good question. So living free to me right now in this moment really feels deeply connected to waking up every morning and asking myself, what do I desire to do? How do I want to spend my day? And also upholding my previous commitments, honoring what I, want to do, but also like what's going to take me to where I want to go in the future. That's where I'm at with the balance there.
Yeah, I love the masculine and feminine, living in harmony.
Yes.
How did it look like for you, for example, today? How does a day in Aislinn's life look like?
Yeah, it's definitely a day where I'm bridging both. This is really the only thing officially on the calendar that I have. I usually leave my Fridays open, and I woke up this morning. I have an 8-month-old puppy, and he's in his teenage phase, so he's got a lot of energy. So while I'm in my later luteal phase right now, and I just wanted to relax and sit on the couch with a cup of tea. But he's like, we're going outside. And so we had to do some training, and we did a little hike, which was beautiful. So it got us outside in the sunshine. And now I'm just sitting down for more of that commitment side of things. And I have probably some Facebook Lives or Instagram Lives to do this afternoon. And I'm also in a launch right now. So there's a lot of intuitive guidance coming through while also honoring like commitments and more of that structural side of showing up for what I need to do to create outcomes that I desire.
I loved it. And when you intuitively answer this question, what's the commitment you're working towards? What's your vision right now? Like, what are you committing to?
That's a very good question. Thank you for bringing me even deeper into my own awareness. So I'm working towards that bigger, more expansive freedom for myself, my business, of course, but also long term. If we're looking at a few years from now, I really do want to be able to own my own home one day. I want to have a really beautiful home-based sanctuary that is mine. I want to be able to jet set and travel when I want to while having the greatest care for, my dog, my eventual family that I'll probably have. So I'm 32, and I feel like a lot of women in that age are really thinking hard and deeply about what's coming, what's next, what needs to be brought in, what needs to be manifested, what gets to be manifested, from that maturity. So kind of moving from just doing what I want to do every single day, every single month, and just letting my business kind of unfold as it does, bringing more of that attention and intention to those deeper roots that I feel like are probably coming soon.
I loved it. And I also feel if money was a person, money loves to go into places where it has a purpose, right? If it's just sitting on the bank account, it's like, I don't know. But if you have like, I want a beautiful home, I want to decorate it the way I want it to, I want a garden and flowers, and money's like, ooh, I want to go there. It's exciting.
Chills. Yes, the garden, the flowers, the kitchen. Like I love interior design. I have that similar wood carving actually behind my bed, but it's more of the brown that you have behind you right now. Like I love just decorating my space and making it so my own. Like a lot of people watch my Instagram stories. They're like, we love what you share and coach on, but we also just love seeing like your home, and your cozy living spaces. And it's like another passion of mine. So
Absolutely. It's also an expression of the soul, right? It's your website is an expression of your soul, the words you speak, but also the home is such a big piece, especially for us. We spend so much time in our homes, and it has to be an expression of who we are, and it also changes as we evolve.
Oh, it changes all the time. I was thinking about that just yesterday. Like, I mean, I'm sure you have those moments in your life where you're like, everything needs to go, everything needs to be upgraded. Like, we need to redecorate everything. It's like sometimes I want to be really bohemian and, eclectic. And then sometimes I just want like white velvet, just bringing both of those pieces of myself
Totally.
to, probably depends on where I'm at in my cycle too, but so
absolutely. Or when there's big life changes, it also changes. Like the colors of my brand changed so many times, depending on how I'm evolving.
Yes.
All right. So I would love to talk with you. I know you're the living embodiment of the work that you preach, that you're sharing with the world. And orgasmic manifestation is a huge part of who you are, of what you teach, of what you bring into the people you work with. Can you explain what that means for you right now? I'm sure it changes like as well as the interior design.
It does change. It does change depending on my cycle, depending on my relationship, depending on stress levels, depending on all of that. But if we kind of just whittle it down and get into the pureness of it, to me, it really is like the deepest connection to my spirituality, my soul, the magic, the wonder, and the awe that I have in the world, the ability for my body to feel really turned on when I'm living my alignment, right? When I'm living my path, that I know is full of the unknown. It's full of things that I don't know yet, right? But it's also so deeply about my fulfillment, my satisfaction, my truly like the pleasure of existing, which I know sounds very esoteric, very broad, but it really is about that deep connection where, like, if you truly are that connected, if you truly are that aware of the fleeting time that we have here on this planet, why would you not maximize how much connection you can feel, how much intimacy you can feel, how much pleasure you can feel, how much delight that you can feel, whether it's just drinking a glass of water or making actual love with your partner or walking in the sunshine and feeling the sun on your skin. Like, why not especially bring that into business and making decisions from that place of wonder? And it's funny, I'm already feeling like people are like, but that's not how the world works, but that's not how business works, but that's not how money works. And I'm like, but a lot of people are cut off from that level of or accessing that. And that's really what I'm passionate about, helping people reconnect to.
I just had goosebumps on my right side for some reason. My whole right arm. And I feel there's so much truth in this. And the reason why people think it's not working and this is not how the world works is because they are cut off from the trust in something bigger, in the trust in themselves, in their souls. And of course, if we don't trust, we try to control, we try to hold on. But if we are like this, very tense and clingy, there's no room and no space for magic to surprise us. There's no space for miracles to happen. And this was so huge. My whole life, I had to do things on my own. Every time I fell, there was no one to catch me. So I made every single decision in my life based on me knowing how the outcome will be. I used to be a school teacher because I knew after 6 years, I will get this amount of income. It has made me feel safe, a false identity of safety. All the things, all the decisions based on I need to know, because if it doesn't work out, if I really share what's moving in my heart and it doesn't work, I'm falling. And then it felt like death, like dying. And only when life took away all I gave power to and all the things and people, I outsourced my safety and my identity. Only when life stripped that away from me and I was forced to surrender into the depth of my soul and my truth and allowed this to happen, to surrender to it because I didn't have any other choice. That's when I found my truth strength. And that's when I felt like, I even felt it in a ceremony, in a plant medicine ceremony, where I was being guided by God, by the universe. I was dancing like really this expressive surrendered dance. And it felt like I'm so guided and supported. And when I look back, I knew it all along, but I didn't trust in that.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh.
That's the most important thing we can do on this journey, to open back up. But that requires a lot of healing work, right? If we didn't feel safe in the past, all these things will come up. And of course, after the first thing that feels uncomfortable, we're like, see, this doesn't work for me. The world doesn't work like this. But only if we lean into this uncomfortable and feel our emotions and, the all the trauma, if we work with that, that's when the magic can meet us, because we are open and not like we have to know how everything goes.
Yes. And there's no shame in that perspective. Like, I feel so deeply around like the frustration that people have, the desire to continue to prove themselves right from that place of protection, right? From that place of control. And I'm a self-proclaimed control freak. Like, that's why we do this work, similar to you, right? Where there's coping mechanisms. There are previous ways of doing things because achievement is highly respected, right? Because there's the opportunity to just rewire what's valuable for you, what's secure for you, what's safe for you. And it feels wrong sometimes and not necessarily natural to believe in the unknown, to trust in the unseen, and to kind of give your hands up to God, source, universe, spirit, in that energy of just like, okay, maybe there's a greater plan for me that if I let go a little bit, I will fall into, I will be let go into. And that has happened consistently in my life. Like the most beautiful things in my life have happened when I've leaned into this door is opening for me. I may as well see what's on the other side of it. But I didn't open it myself. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like it opened and I was like, this is showing up for a reason, whether that was a relationship, you know, a partner, a trip that led to a big, you know, life pivot or a breakup, you know, like I'm not choosing necessarily these particular things. Maybe I am on some level, right? Taking responsibility. But there is that magic and wonder that always is birthed through that portal, through that gateway. And that is scary. I understand why that's scary for a lot of people. It's scary for me, but it's a muscle of trust that you learn to work with and build up through opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. So it sounds like you have gone through very similar portals, similar experiences.
Yeah. I mean, if you can't control it anymore, if you don't have anything to hold on to anymore, you have to let go and you have to trust, even if it's the most scary and uncomfortable feeling in the world. If you lean into that and sit with it and be with it and not hold on to the next thing you can grab, that's where
Yeah.
your power lies. And that's where you've realized, wow, there's so much more than we can even imagine with our limited minds. Like there's so much
Yeah.
magic in this world. And I'm
Yeah.
curious because I feel the resistance to our truth is what makes us suffer and what makes us believe this doesn't work, right? Like I, for example, I always knew my soul always wanted to share about tantra and sensuality, but I was so scared because I was slut shamed in the past and I was so afraid what people would think. It didn't feel safe.
Yes.
And so I tiptoed around it. I thought about health and I thought about healing that felt safe. But then at one point, I stopped resisting what my soul wanted to birth. Like what was coming through was so strong and it changed my life more and more and just extended. And only when I committed to my truth and gave up the resistance to what I thought I have to do and what felt safe, that's when like the growth that I'm experiencing right now is so big because I'm in alignment with that. And I'm
Yes.
curious in your life, when you look back, where was your resistance to that? When did you not live in alignment? And how did it? I mean, every time there's disharmony in nature to the truth, right? There's suffering, there's things fall
Yeah.
out of alignment. How did that show up on your journey? What were the biggest
Oh my goodness.
holding on moments?
I have so many chills right now because there have been definitely a few of those. And I'm working with a few clients right now in that agitation pressure bubble where there's like, I hold them with so much trust and confidence because I'm like, well, I know where you're going. I'm not worried at all because I've been through that multiple times. And it always leads to the greatest refreshing, rejuvenating experiences where you're just like, oh, I was realizing that I couldn't continue down that path, right? I couldn't. Hi, sweetie. My dog is all antsy. Can you lay down? Thank you. So in those experiences, I always like it always feels very blinding and it feels very restricting right before you're pushed and shifting into something that's more open, right? So I would say the biggest two scenarios where that's happened for me. The first was when I was working as a graphic and web designer. I was living here in Boulder in my early 20s, which is where I live again. And I was working at kind of a desk job. There was a certain level of freedom, of course. I was very appreciative of being there and having that opportunity. But something in my soul was just like, you're meant for more. You're meant for more. You're meant for more. Not that you're not grateful, but you're still meant for more. And there's a big life change about to happen. And I didn't know what that was, but I was invited to take a trip to Panama and Costa Rica. And on that trip, I made some connections and I ended up moving to Panama and Costa Rica that next year. So, with these kinds of pressurized little bubbles, you're going to get invitations in those spaces of resistance. But a lot of people are so focused on why it's not working and why it doesn't feel good that they miss the opportunities to actually like open back to something that's guiding you forward, right?
Yes.
And I don't think you can really miss that. It's going to keep showing up for you, but
Getting louder, louder
it'll
and
get
louder.
louder. So that leads me to my second one, which was, and I mean, that whole trip to Costa Rica, I ended up, it was like massively life-changing, you know, really powerful plant ceremony stuff and relationship, leadership, natural disasters. Like it was a whole year. It was like, it was so the next big pressure bubble that I was in was actually at the end of 2020, or excuse me, the beginning of 2020, where, you know, COVID was starting to happen with the world. I was actually living in Las Vegas with a ex-partner, and there were just like resistances, tension with this lack of willingness to actually trust that we weren't supposed to be together moving forward. And I wasn't going to make that decision. And it ended up coming to the point where like it had to be made more so by him. Actually, he brought the truth of that. And I was so in the illusion of like no love and everlasting love. And we've been in this for so long, like we can't give this up. Right. So that was the second feeling where just things didn't feel like I couldn't fully see the future. That's a really big issue. That's a really big sign. So when you can't see the future where you are, you need to revisit like what your vision is and ask yourself what's here and what's not here, who's here and who's not here. And that is painful. I'm not saying any of this is like easy peasy. It's painful. And if you don't make the move will be made because it truly is in your highest service. And you know, everyone can have their own opinion about that. Of course, everyone is entitled to their own beliefs around that. But for me, that ended up leading to a big rebirth and then spit me out on the other side where I am now in a really beautiful relationship that happened from all of that self-work that I looked at for myself, all of the reflection, all of the grief, and basically like the full life reroute from that. Those are two examples of that, but I think that the themes of I can't see myself here long term. Where am I going to go now? Will come up. And most people just ignore that because it's painful to look at, it's painful to face, and it's confusing too, you know, but I do know that if you lean into that, it's like a little agitation bubble, right? Where you're just like, you're being shaken up and something's about to shift. Lean into that and constantly be revisiting the future. And then if you can, make those conscious choices to put yourself in the path of opening the vision back up again. And that's always a sign that you're, you know, you're aligned and energy is coming in and life is coming in versus stagnation maintained, right?
I love that. And if someone is listening and they feel, oh my God, this is me, I'm in this not knowing, not having phase, I want to grab on so bad, I want to know so bad. Do you have a tip for those? I mean, we all revisit these spaces. What helps you in these moments to regulate your nervous system, to be stay in trust in your vision, even if you can't see a little thing of it yet? You just how do you make yourself believe in yourself and your vision so bad and in something bigger that you keep on going, even if everything falls apart and it seems like nothing seems to work?
Definitely. That's a really good question. So I think this is so personal for everyone. But the first thing that I would invite people to do is actually like disconnect from fixing a problem. Like there's no problem to fix. And I think that that's the default nervous system decision that your body makes. I don't feel good. There has to be a problem. So let me look for the problem and let me fix the problem. And then you kind of like dig yourself deeper into that evidence and that proof and that story. So I feel like, especially in the micro moments, let's even make an example of, you know, you're in an intense conversation with a partner or a friend or a family member, and you're trying to fix a problem when both of you are dysregulated. You're probably not going to find a resolution in that energetic. So what do? It's hard to do this, especially for me. And my boyfriend has been so beautiful in terms of like assisting me with these processes where we need to take space. We need to take a breather. We need to create space between that reactivity and trying to find a solution, because you're not going to find it in that same wavelength. So it's the same on the macro scale, right? It's the same on the bigger level, where if you are in the frustration, agitation, fix it energy, and you're trying to like fix the vision, you're not going to feel like it's right. So I would give yourself a time block. And this could be micro or macro. This could be an afternoon, or this could be a month, where you take your hands off of trying to find a solution and fixing a problem, and instead go and try and find like small delights that make you feel alive. Maybe that's extra time in nature. Maybe it's a camping trip. Maybe you take a trip, get on a plane somewhere if you have the resources and the time to. Create space between you and the agitation and frustration, and start to look for openings. So this is spiritual, right? Like I'm speaking more to that woman who's like already in connection to the divine in her own way. And she is just receptive. So there's an intention to actually show up day to day, even before you get out of bed. How can I be receptive to open doors today? How can I be receptive for opportunities that align with where I want to go today? How can I define, maybe I don't know where I'm going, but I know what I want to feel. So I know that next week, next month, next year, I want to feel relieved, peaceful, grounded. I want to feel in love. I want to feel financially free, right? I want to feel the opportunities to make whatever decisions I want to make spontaneously. What do you want to feel? And then start to show up in your days doing your best. It's not going to be perfect. It's probably going to be messy. That's fine. But if you can show up receptive to the next stepping stone, you're going to stop making it a problem that you're not farther ahead and that you don't have it figured out. Because the pressure and the expectation is more on the level that your body can respond to, versus your nervous system feeling way dysregulated that you're not on step 10 yet, right? When you don't even know what step 1 looks like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And when you were speaking, I also got the vision of the flower, that I sometimes do that with my body when I feel like, it's edgy for me to invest in someone, or I don't know if I leave this person, if there's gonna come something else or something better,
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to hold on so bad.
Yes.
It's like a flower being open, that I relax, even my lower belly and my yoni, I just relax and I allow. If I pay something that's edgy, I'm like, okay, instead of holding on and needing to know if it pays off, I'm relaxing my body and I trust on a physical level also. And then, of course, in the mind and in the heart. And there's a lot of tools that have supported me as well. Like EFT was a lifesaver when my nervous system was so dysregulated, and
100%.
yoga nidra. Like there's so many tools that can really guide us through this journey, because it's an expansion, and expansion requires growing pain, and most of us don't know how to handle that, right? That's why.
Yes, it's an experiment for a lot of people. When I was in like the depths of that dysregulation, just like when you were with EFT, I did a lot of EFT as well. And most people feel like they should just be able to fix the problem themselves. But when you're in that dysregulation, co-regulation with someone who really feels safe is, I would say, a requirement. I would go as far as to say that it's a necessity. And that might look like a massage therapist that really knows who you are, knows your story, knows your energy, the subtle body. It could look like a therapist who you really trust in. It could look like a group of women who can just hold you as you cry. It can look like people who don't wallow with you, hold you to a high standard, but also allow you to show up with the true feelings that you really have in the moment. I think that was for me so healing, because you do need to purge what you're letting go of to welcome in what's new. And that purging of what you're letting go of, your body knows how to do that. If you put it in spaces where you do feel safe enough to let go of all of the ugly. I was talking about this on a client call this last week. Like you need the space to be able to punch the pillows, to cry, to literally have snot running down your face. Like you need to be able to melt into that level of what is real for you and not hold it in or hold it back. And I was noticing, even for myself, when I was going through these kinds of stages, it was, it's this feeling of like I almost need someone to witness me in this for it to come out. Have you felt that? Like I can't just do it.
For some reason, I'm the opposite. Like when I'm
okay.
I always wish I could have these experiences in a group, but it always happens when I feel utterly alone and I'm in the most dark place, when I purge the deepest trauma. For some reason, it never happens in a group, but I wish I could.
Yeah. Well, that just signifies where you feel the safest.
Yeah.
And for me, it's almost like a little toddler who's like holding in pressure. And then the mom is like, "Oh, sweetie, are you okay?" And the toddler's like, "No, not okay." And then, I feel like sometimes moms have that tendency, or family members that you're closest to, where like you're this pressure bubble or balloon and someone's like, "Poke," and then,
I can have that with emotions, but with the trauma, for some reason it always happened in the messy places alone. And I love what you were sharing about the purges and that the body knows what to do. And this blows my mind. Like the body has all the wisdom to heal itself. Mm-hmm. But we want to make sense of that sometimes. Like when I was going through that, when I allowed my mind to kick in, I didn't know what was happening. Like I was literally shaking sometimes and really ugly cries. And I even purged. I never puke, but I purged energy, and I purged. Even I threw up a whole day and I couldn't move. And I was like, what is happening? But then after, I could feel a difference in my energy and in my physical body as well. I felt lighter. I felt like, wow, that just something huge died that was not me. And it's mind-blowing what the body can do if we allow it and not try to, like, it has to look this way and for you it has to be this way, but to be like, it can be messy, it can be ugly, it can be painful. Allow your body. Sometimes there's even noises coming out of my body, like really deep primal noises that I have no idea where they come from. But I just allow the body to do whatever it wants to do, and it gives us so much more pleasure too. And that's the last thing I would love to dive in with you.
Let's go there.
Like even in the bedroom, we're so conditioned to, make these heartfelt noises when we mourn and when how we're supposed to look and to sound. And when I gave myself permission to follow my body, the same with the purging, when I felt these deeper pleasure capacities from my lower body, the sound was deeper, the sound was more primal, and it expanded how I experienced sexuality in a whole new level. So how can what would you tell a woman that is slowly coming out of the other side of all the healing work, and she wants to lean into more orgasmic manifestation, she wants to feel more pleasure, she wants to allow herself to be more in her body in her everyday life? How can that look like? That you also get from the growing pain, not only the dark, deep, messy shit, but also the other side of that pendulum that holds the pleasure and the bliss and the joy and the ease and the freedom and all of that.
I love that. So that is so deeply polarity, right? Like that topic where the deeper you go into the pain, the grief, that darkness, the bottomless pit where you're crying and then you think you're done crying and there's more and there's more and there's more. And you're like, how do I continue to have more? Well, it exists in the opposite. It exists in the polarity of that. So to me, the deeper you go in that capacity, the deeper you go in the pleasure capacity. And neurologically speaking, pain and pleasure are wired really similarly in our bodies. And no one's like, bring on the pain, really. Like, most people aren't like, yay, grief.
Woo!
Wow, the best roller coaster of my life. Like, no, it's horrible. And if you have the awareness in those moments, or mentors, or just listen to this podcast again if you're in those moments. But if you can look for it, it's there. In that grief, in that weird bottomless nothingness of darkness and rebirth and destruction, there is a really strange but pure and real sense of aliveness and beauty, which I'm only saying this from being in that state of almost being confused when that first arose for myself. Like when it was first present, I was like, this is weird. How can I actually find a little bit of beauty in this? It was almost like me touching how alive I was in those moments, because you're in so much pure emotion, so much awareness around things come and things go. Love comes, love goes, right? Like that awareness brings you really close to, if I can feel this much of this depth in darkness, in grief, in loss, I can also feel my capacity for more love, pleasure, and joy being birthed simultaneously. And I almost see like an embryo, right, where there's two cells, right, and it's growing, or like a nebula, or those telescope pictures where there's like two equal and opposite masses in the galaxies, right? I don't know if you guys have seen those pictures, but I see that kind of association with this energetic conversation that we're having. So in order to be more receptive, so I feel like it's all about receptivity. In order to be more receptive to the life of joy and love and pleasure and that depth, it's about bringing yourself into full, it almost means that you're meeting that primal nature really closely, like a primal animalistic nature where you aren't thinking about how pretty you are. You aren't thinking about what you look like. You aren't thinking about, do you sound good enough to be accepted? It's purely about raw expression, raw body feelings. And that, to me, if you're crying and screaming and snotting in grief, you can also be crying and screaming and snotting in pleasure and orgasmic energy, which I've done a lot of. Like the amount of times I've cried in orgasmic energy, or post orgasm, or post making love, like it is a release. It's a letting go of anything that was blocking that presence. Like it's pure presence. How many times as a woman have you made love and then you lie in a puddle of just like, I'm not thinking about tomorrow, I'm not thinking about yesterday, I'm literally like, like it's just pure, like I'm thoughtless, I'm giggles and thoughtlessness. That's all I am post that energy, right? That kind of experience leads you to just letting go of the bullshit and what doesn't matter, and the micromanaging of how you look or how you're showing up. It doesn't cross your mind when you're in that space of release and raw expression. It's my experience. I'd love to hear your experience with that.
Yeah, it resonates so much. Like every word you said, it's also, I mean, everything in life, right? When we stop worrying about what other people think, if our partner thinks that's awkward, if we make these sounds, if we feel safe enough to express ourselves unapologetically, like there's a whole new universe, what's possible in the bedroom, in life, when you give yourself this permission. And I love that so much.
Yes.
Do you work? Sorry, yeah.
You go ahead.
I have one last question.
Okay.
Even though I said it's the last one, I have another one. Do you use your sexual energy for manifestation too? Like, do you use sex magic for what you desire in life? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So One of your previous questions when I was in like a pressure bubble, and that kind of the pivot, something was beyond that frustration. Something like that happened right before I actually launched one of my signature programs, which is called Orgasmic Manifestation. And I launched that in June of 2018. And that feeling of like, who am I to do this? Oh my God, this is crazy. Oh my gosh, like, should I do this? This is a very risque, taboo topic, right? So that I ended up listening to that whim. I followed through, and it's been my most successful, continued, sustained program ever since. And I brought that program online. I brought that program to the world, even though it was massively vulnerable. And I had to face like my family, knowing that like, here goes Aislinn launching a program called on the internet. It was a little intense for me, but also has been just a deep core pillar to my business. Even though I'm a business success coach, like bringing in sexual energy is really important, especially as a woman on the path of not just success for success sake or achievement sake, but really like, does it feel good? Does what you're creating feel good for you? So how do you know what that means if you don't know what that feels like in your body? If you don't know what orgasmic energy and connecting to, like, this isn't just sex. And that's what I teach in OM. It's not just sex. It's not just making love. It's not just self-pleasure. To me, I'm sure you also probably relate, Tanya, but there's that connection when you're really in a place of presence and meditation. Maybe your sacral chakra is very alive, and it feels like it's circulating through your heart and your breath, every single breath that you take, and the slowness of every inhale and the slowness of every exhale amplifies that sense of, I'm alive. I can feel this. I can feel deeply grounded, and I can feel deeply connected at the same time. So sexual energy, and this is very tantric, right? With sexual energy and creative energy are, deeply linked. So if I'm helping women create success, usually it's from their creative impulses. We're talking about creativity, and we're talking about impulse, and we're talking about bringing through your deepest level of yes and intuitive and trust, then I feel like that is going to really stay connected or maintain that connection to sexual energy. So this doesn't mean like having sex and orgasmic manifestation every single day to like get what you want. That's fine too, like if you want to play in that realm, but it's much more about what feels opening, like what feels expansive to you, and then what feels like a contraction and what feels like a no. And to me, when you're working with your body and your sexual energy and your pleasure and receptivity, that's the greatest compass. It's the best map to know what that feels like before you're creating things that you're not trusting, or from contraction, or from should, or from force, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I feel, yeah, if we follow that, what really feels expensive, and then meet the edges where we, have to dive deeper, and where we have to like really free ourselves from the conditioning and the stories. Like I had moments this week where it almost felt like a volcano. Through all this trauma work, it felt like my channel is being cracked open, and what wanted to come through so badly suddenly exploded, and I couldn't I couldn't stop writing. It just exploded through me. It really felt like lava, really powerful energy just being birthed through me. And sometimes I had to lay in bed, and I didn't even touch myself. It was just like this energetic. It wasn't really an orgasm. I had energetic orgasms before. It was more like energy just moving through my body. And it blows my mind if we really, I wish this for every single woman, that we release the stories, that we release what we think we should be, and really allow ourselves that source can flow through us. And even if it's tantra and it's scary to tell your family that you're talking about orgasmic energy on the internet and you're waving around with crystal ones and yoni eggs, like this was really scary. Totally. but it's
Totally.
what moves my
Literally.
heart, and what's changed my life. And I want this life doesn't have to be hard if we choose a different story, if we find the
Mm,
courage to get out of these states where we feel stuck because we think we don't deserve more, or we think
yes.
there's no other way. I really hope that every woman that's listening like soaks this wisdom from you and what I just shared up and implements that. And even
Yeah.
if it's not possible now, to let it sink in and to maybe open to consider another possibility of how life can feel like if you really go to the deeper places, so you can also feel in complete aliveness and
Yes.
accept more and more of who you are. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope no one feels ashamed that they're maybe not there yet, or maybe there's that little inkling. And I love what you just said, like maybe just bringing the possibility in, the potential of it, even if it's not 100% possible right now, there's a curiosity, and the curiosity sparks a question. Oh,
Mm.
maybe that's possible for me. And when you're moving through the world with the question and the looking for a potential opening, right? Like, oh, maybe that level of openness, desire, potential for pleasure, sexual exploration, liberation, right? Like honoring my body. Maybe that is all my story eventually. I think that that's a really important and very powerful place to start.
Yeah.
And I'm sure from Tanya and myself, like whoever is listening, there's always more resources. So if this conversation sparks something for you, listen to that little fire spark, listen to that. There's something there. That's how it started for me. I
Mhm.
was on hormonal birth control for 10 years, disconnected from my cycle for 10 years, could never orgasm with a partner. I was in that space of just like not feeling fully safe, not feeling fully connected. And that can change when you start to ask yourself different questions and lead yourself into different communities and resources that have
Mm.
answers that maybe you don't have yet.
Yes, yes, yes. And the spark can turn literally into a volcano. Like this spark, every single woman has this infinite potential that we can create everything we desire. And sometimes we wait until it comes to us, or we wait until we feel ready and safe to do it. But this spark will only begin to grow if like you said, you surround yourself with people that went through, that already walked this way, or on the same journey. If we surround ourselves with people that never allow that spark to
Yeah.
grow, then of course it will be watered down, and it will at one point maybe even die. And then when you die, you think, oh my God, what happened to that spark? Like for me, it was living on this island. I always knew, I saw these pictures in my visions for 15 years, and I knew my
Wow.
soul just wanted to be here, and I never knew where it was. And I almost believed the people that said, like, you're dreaming, like, come back to earth and just be happy for what you have. You have a safe job. People would die to be a teacher, like
Yeah.
the position you have. And I was like, maybe you're right, because when you're not connected to your truth, you will start believing what people say because you don't know what's true for you. And
Yeah.
only when we
100%.
come back to our truth and yeah, I just want everyone to know, if you have a desire in your heart, if you have a vision for your life, it's not for no reason. Like I really believe if you see something, no matter how big it is, I see a huge retreat center one day, and even though it's so far away, I don't have a single doubt that it's gonna be more beautiful than I can ever imagine. That you believe that desire. This desire is your future version already living it.
Yes.
And by
Yes.
connecting and trusting that so deeply, enjoy the ride along the way. Like Melanie says, one foot in gratitude, one foot in desire, and go like this through your life.
Yeah, that's
I feel,
beautiful.
yeah.
Yes. There's just so much trust also that comes from women like you who have done the thing, right? That scared you, that you said, maybe that's not in the cards for me. You being the manifestation of that gives so many other women permission to try, right? Like
Yeah.
it's one thing to preach it. It's one thing to
Mhm.
talk about it. It's one thing to tell other people what to do. And it's a whole other level when you are speaking with so much trust because you've done it. You're on the other side of it. And now you're living the example of what that original spark was. And
Mm.
that's what everyone has inside of them. And that's what mentorship is. That's what coaching is. That's what being a visionary creative woman is. you're leading the way. Where are you going? What are you leading the conversation around? And are you living that conversation? Right? Like, are you
Mm,
turned on by that conversation?
exactly.
Yes.
Totally. And it's really the embodiment of what you want to bring in the world. Like I knew I want to inspire people. I felt it in my bones, but I wasn't inspired myself. Only when I
Hmm.
leaped and I sold everything I ever owned, I came here with one backpack and literally cut off. Like I lost so many people on this journey. I lost everything I ever thought I was. I burned everything to the ground, and even though it felt like dying, literally, I rose into the version that I was always meant to be, but that couldn't flourish in my old environment. I could have never become the woman I am today in Germany. It was not
Yes.
possible.
Yeah. Like that, what you just talked about, like you can't flourish in your current environment if it's just stifling and you know it. You need, that's courage, that's bravery. Once again, not saying it's easy, but very, rewarding things come from honesty, like where are you being called to, where are you meant to go, and honoring that and knowing that about yourself. Like that just reinforces your self-trust. You'll be able to do that again and again and again and again, and you'll know what's on the other side of it once you give yourself that example that it works.
Exactly. When the things you thought would break you, you're being forced to be in that, and you see, wow, I came out of it and I actually feel empowered from it.
Yes. Woo!
Wow, thank you so much for your energy and for your words. I really loved having you here. There's one last question I would
Mm.
like to ask you that I ask all of my podcast interview guests, and you can close your eyes for this one. If you could travel back in time, and sometimes there pops up one version of you at age intuitively, if you could give her one advice, one thing you learned about your journey that you know now but you didn't know back then, what would you tell her?
Oh, the magic just keeps on amplifying. So if there's a point where you feel stuck, if there's a point where you feel stagnated, you're not going to stay there. It never stays that way. There's no need to worry about what to do. There's no need to be in the mind and trying to, I mean, just like our conversation today, there's really no need for you to try and fix or solve or find the right way. Like the
Mm,
magic will show up, the doors will open. It always has. 32 plus years later, it keeps happening. So that to me, it feels like my inner compass that sometimes, even today, I still do have my moments where I forget that that's how life is working for me. And it's funny, like our minds will go into a strange place of convincing us that all of a sudden it's not that way anymore. But when we look at the bigger picture, like that's how life works. That's what keeps happening. And that's something to be able to trust again and again and again and again. So
mm,
it's the deep love, the deep, being deeply held and deeply guided from a place of pure, like really pure love. Like I can't even put human words to how that feels. Um, to know that I'm like in a cozy blanket of warmth. Even
yes.
when I don't feel like I am, even when I forget it, that's what comes up for me.
Yeah. And it's so easy to, if we're in that moment, to go into the places of what could go wrong and oh my god, we need to know, and then to look back of how many times it already unfolded magically.
Exactly.
And it's a daily reminder. I mean, we have the soul and the spirit, and that's always connected, but sometimes we forget, and we also have an ego, and we are humans, and we have a vessel, and we still carry pain. Like it's a never
Oh
ending
yeah.
story of healing, and to have the balance to remember if we fall back into the ego, to remember, oh, actually, it's okay to trust. It's okay to
Yeah.
open.
It is. It
Mm.
is. It is. It is. Yes, I did that. Thank you for asking me that. You really have asked some beautiful questions.
Mm.
I love it when people ask questions that feel just like going right to the core of things, right to the truth of things. I thrive on that. So thank you.
That's my jam. Some
You're
people
really
hate
good
it
at
though.
Keep doing it. You're great at it.
Thank you. How can people connect with you and find your magic?
People can connect with me mainly through Instagram. That's my primary platform. My Instagram handle is at Abundance Witch. And my name is Aislinn Walton. I also have a website, aislinnwalton.com. And I'm always open to chat. I have programs, I have masterminds, I have private coaching. I always love connecting with women who want to explore working with me, whether it's going to happen today, whether it's going to happen next year. I'm always open for the conversation to see what might next step be. So Instagram, website, and you can always email me at aislinn@aislinnwalton.com also.
I will link it in the show notes. Thank you so much for
you.
this conversation, Aislinn.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you. Have a beautiful day.
You too.